I've been in this field and in this business for quite a long time, and I've always been attracted to organizational change and organizational development. And I told Quentin this story a while ago. I actually started out with the aluminum company of America, Alcoa, and it was a very interesting time where diversity, women, anybody who wasn't white male probably wasn't going to do real good in in this company anywhere. And I started realizing what the disparities and kind of the inequities of the workplace were. And I then moved into a labor union, which I'm sharing this story because it really helped shape where I ended up and where I am today. I think it's one of those critical pieces. And I began to see that leader and supervisor behavior really was a critical component of what some of the dysfunctional activities are that go on in the workplace. And I represented employees, and I would see over and over again continued grievances. And it wasn't because the managers were bad or the leaders were bad or they wanted to be bad or hurt. It's because of human nature, and they did not know how to lead and supervise and be effective managers. And I then subsequently learned that you cannot organize a well-led company. So if you look at it today, you will see that the really well-led, well-managed companies do not have as much labor management activity as others, simply because the need for having a healthy, constructive workforce is understood on the part of the leaders and is expected and required, measured, and tracked within their organization. So it was that experience that really caused me to go work on the management side and begin to try and work with leaders of organizations to help them be more constructive in how they dealt with others, more humanistic, more participative, rather than the classic command and control leaders of the industrial age. Now, the challenge has been that while in our hearts, most leaders do want to, if you ask them, and I think the human synergistic tool was very enlightening for me on that point. If you ask them what the ideal leadership style is, they will all just about tell you, for those of you that know the tool, and I suspect everybody in this room knows the tools, right? Okay. If you ask them, they will almost always tell you that it's a constructive style. That's what they want. But they are ill-equipped in many ways when the pressures of the day-to-day tasks push them back into a command and control kind of situation. And I do think that the prevailing leadership style still is a command and control style. And that's what caused me and my partner, we went to graduate school together, we got our PhDs together, and we got very interested in doing research that matters around human capital and around people. And we believe, and we have subsequently proved, that as much rigor that goes into understanding finance, marketing, strategy in organizations can also be applied to people. But for some reason, people in the human resource field or organizational development field don't apply that same kind of rigor. And as a result of that, very often are considered soft. How does this relate to the bottom line? You know, why is it that if I have a management group that really is aggressive defensive, how is that impact? Why should I even care? Well, there's lots of reasons why you should care. Companies spend huge amounts of money on learning and development. They spend huge amount of money on performance management systems. They spend huge amount of money on talent management systems, data analysis. They don't do a lot of data analysis, surprisingly enough. They do a lot of, you know, SAP, PeopleSoft, all of these kinds of things to capture data on their talent, but they're not doing things that are integrated, that really inform how these activities are in fact changing and impacting the business outcomes. And therein lies the flaw in our field. And that is why I am so attracted to the human synergistics tools. So just to add to this, I was in a brokerage house, a Wall Street brokerage house. I was the head of leadership and organization development for this company many years ago when I was getting my PhD. And it was really interesting. The company was very concerned that their employee surveys were so negative. They kept sending them out year after year, and they got really terrible scores around leadership. They didn't trust the leaders. They felt the leaders were really aggressive. They didn't get any feedback. And yet when you walked into the company, it said, you know, we're a team. We value collaboration. We're innovative. We walk, right? Don't we see this all the time? And there is nobody in this company that's saying, well, this is what you're saying. What are the behaviors that are associated with these wonderful platitudes? And are you, in fact, operating in a way that supports that? Now, it sounds so simple today because we're so much more sophisticated. And, you know, we used to say, leaders don't walk the talk. And you talk to senior leaders and say, you're not walking the talk. And people couldn't quantify that. So we did an organization culture inventory. And interestingly enough, it was very clear that the leaders were not operating and did not had behaviors that were quite contrary to those words. And I brought it back as an experiment, shared it with them. I thought they were going to fire me on the spot because, of course, they were very aggressive, defensive. And I said, stop. Look what you're doing. You know, you're doing exactly what this survey says you do. And it was a real wake-up call. And I learned a very big lesson from that. I said, you know, you can continue operating as you are. That's fine. Then take down the slogan. Be authentic to who you are. Tell people, you come work here, we're going to work you to death for 5 years, 3 years. You'll get a great resume. You'll make a lot of money. You'll be burned out. You'll go move on. At least be truthful about it. Or say, we're not here, and we're trying to get here. And put in place strategies that will really begin to move you forward. Now, the interesting part of this story is this was the most expensive brokerage house in Wall Street, meaning its turnover rate was 35%. Now, think about that. Any company that has a turnover rate of leaders at 35%, what are managers doing every day? They're filling jobs because a third of their workforce is not there. And then another third of their workforce is up a learning curve, trying to figure out how to get things done around here. And guess what happens? When you've got half your people trying to figure out how to get things done around here, you have a lot of waste, a lot of error, a lot of cost, and a lot of customer dissatisfaction because there are no consistent processes within the organization. So this, of course, was true. The organization had terrible failure rates. Now, in a financial institution, for any of you that work with finance institutions, you know that you pay huge penalties if trades are not done correctly, if FX is not done correctly, if all these kinds of things. And it was quite a problem. The company no longer exists. It was bought out by someone else. And so I do think that that's the mantra of not paying attention to what leaders do and the kind of culture that you create.